the alone time and also being able to take breaks from the art, whereas like when I was locked in my studio, I never stepped away. There's a lot of power in, if you're stuck on a piece or you're not really sure what direction to go, just stepping away, doing something else, and then coming back to it with a fresh set of eyes. And I think most artists probably figured this out way before me, but I never used to do that.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Inspired by Casual Conversations with Creatives. I am your host, Marissa Davis, and I am joined by co-host Jennifer Nelson.
Hello.
Hello. We are excited to embark upon our new episode. It's the middle of summer. It's time for really long days. Kids are out of school. And one of my favorite things, which is a summer road trip.
Summer road trip.
I have very fond memories of being a kid and traveling up and down the East Coast with my family. We were road warriors, so that was the only way that we traveled. So I have very fond memories and really enjoy a good road trip, kind of setting your sights somewhere and experiencing everything that there is to experience in between here and your destination. Do you guys have, what are your thoughts? Are you guys road trippers or prefer to fly?
I'm more of a road tripper now. Not so much when I was a kid because I kind of grew up in a beach town, so it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
It was summer at home.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Go outside.
You didn't
Good
have
luck.
many places that you needed to
Right.
to escape to.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I was like you. We drove from here to New York, 16 hours, did the whole thing. And now with my kids, we do a little bit more flying, but we're doing international. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
road trip
Yeah.
outside.
For
It's
sure.
a very long
Yeah.
ferry. It's not
Very
far.
long day.
I was lucky that my mother always worked in the air
Travel.
travel and travel industry. So, she would be like, let's go to Korea this weekend. So
Wow.
we left Thursday, got there Friday, shopped Saturday, came back Sunday, got
Wow.
back Sunday. So
Holy cow.
I was very lucky.
Yeah, you were definitely a young jet setter. That's
road
exciting.
trip upgrade.
Yes, which is a bummer now because we drive everywhere now.
Well, in honor of the summer road trip, our guest today is very special. She is a mixed media artist. She paints and does all kinds of really interesting neon accent work. And she does all of this while traveling the country in her van that she has converted into a home where she lives and travels all full time. So she doesn't have a home base. She's traveling in her van with all of her things and all of her art and all of her power tools. And I am really excited for you guys to hear her story because it's actually pretty fascinating.
That's cool.
Year-round road trip.
Yeah.
Yes, her name is Diane Portwood, and she will be our guest today. So looking forward to sharing her story with you guys.
That's
Can't wait to
awesome.
hear.
It's exciting.
Well, before we talk to Diane, we start each episode with a creative brief where we have a couple members of our Clementine team that bring a surprise topic of conversation. And today we are joined by Sharon and Paula. So, what have you got for us today?
So today we're going to talk about the power of emotion in marketing and especially in social media and how it affects what we share and what we see and how it shapes our lives in general since we're always doom scrolling. Paula here
Yeah.
can start on the social psychology part of
Yes, human beings are very emotionally driven, and now even more people are driven to social media platforms and engage in one way or another to release feelings or to experience feelings. Emotional marketing has become a very studied topic, and they have found out that there are 4 core emotions that companies have started to use, and it actually drives different kinds of engagements.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with happiness.
My favorite.
Yes,
Emotional marketing.
there. We can
Let's
stay
start, let's
there.
start in a positive note.
Yeah.
Yeah, so happiness equals more shares. So a lot of times when we share content and to share with our friends and family and and just in general, like what we see, we want to see more positive things on social media, not just, the news and we get our news from. So some examples of positive happiness ads that we'd like to talk about. I know like Sabrina Carpenter and Duncan. Duncan's a great marketing mogul, I would say. And Sabrina Carpenter is a very famous, trustworthy singer. Trustworthy as in people know who she is.
Sure.
So you're
Relatable.
Relatable.
Yes.
So you're gonna want to buy more products when you're interested in someone's work and you're already connected to them in some way, and they bring something to you that's positive.
Sure.
And so an example of Duncan and Sabrina Carpenter is their Strawberry Daydream Refresher, so making you feel like you can have an escape from your everyday life and have a daydream moment, and enjoy summer and that summer escape feeling. So I think that would be a fun way to, that's a fun example of happiness in social media.
Daydream about what it's like to be a pop star.
Yeah,
Yes.
right? I'm sure she's enjoying Dunkin' Donuts daily.
I'm sure
Yes.
she is, yes.
Well, I'm going to take the next one. I'm going to be Debbie Downer for this
Uh-oh.
one. This one is sadness.
Dun, dun, dun.
Sadness, the engagement that they found for that is more clicks. We talked about this the other day, the Tiny Chef show, and
That was
it was
sad.
it was so sad. And it started in 2018 actually as a social experiment. So it was born on Instagram and was picked up by Nickelodeon, and they won an Emmy for Best Children's Show, and then they got the news they were canceled. And so what did the creators do? They went to TikTok, Instagram, where they started, and they just told the story. They were canceled in March, but last month is when, I guess it takes some time because he's a little stop animation guy. He's so cute.
Aw.
And it really tugged on people's heartstrings. I mean, they were enraged at Nickelodeon for canceling because they made him cry. And it was sad. And when I was describing it, I mean, he answers the phone and he's so excited to talk to Nickelodeon, and then they're like, "You're canceled," and he just went and he sat down and cried, and
Aw.
that just sparked. It was so they kind of combined another emotion that we're going to talk about later.
Sadness and outrage.
Yes.
That's what they were going for.
And so it worked for them because now people have done GoFundMes. They're buying whatever they can buy from them, so it's keeping them alive, and they're actually talking to other platforms for their show. So it worked for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they made him cry, and everybody ran to save Tiny Chef.
Nobody wants to see a Tiny Chef cry.
No.
No, I've
he's
never
very
watched
cute.
the show. I've never seen the show, but I saw the cancellation
Yeah.
clip, and it was so sad.
Oh, who cried?
I felt.
Did you
so-
cry?
I did not cry, but what was really sad to me is when he starts like talking about all the other people on the team. I don't remember
Yeah,
the names, but he's like,
what-
"But what about?"
Aw.
You know,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, "Oh, this is terrible."
Yeah.
I
And
don't
then-
know what the show is, but it's terrible.
And he ended it with, "I love you too."
Aw.
And it was like, he was like not angry. He just was like, "Okay." And
It
then
was
he cried.
unexpectedly evocative.
It
for,
was.
Yeah, no kidding.
For a little piece of felt.
Sounds
like
traumatic.
Felted
it
character.
was kind of dramatic.
It was, and it really it affected people, and then it outraged people, and they were posting videos about it, and like I said, it worked because they're now, they've raised enough money to keep the show going with their little clips, and he's doing like all kinds of little short form
Aw.
clips. He's bouncing back.
Coming
Well,
back
I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
that.
in a new form.
Yeah.
So the next emotion we're going to talk about is fear and surprise.
Of course.
Yeah, 'cause
People's favorite marketing.
Yeah.
The positive
What a
and
scary
negative
time.
sides of
Yeah.
the same coin.
Yeah.
Yes. So as I scroll Instagram, me personally, I do consume a lot of parenting content. Therefore, the Calm app ad likes to pop up for
Yeah.
me, It's like, chill out, Sharon. You're a full-time mom and full-time worker. So life can be a little bit wild. But I think Calm has a really great way of integrating and helping you feel the power of just calmness and just allowing free access to a lot of more therapeutic tools that's more accessible and more flexible with your schedule. So I think that's like a good way of them showing how to calm that fear, but then an actual way of fear. A lot
Inducing.
yeah.
Use your power for good. Use
Yes.
your power for evil.
Yeah. So an actual, I think, like example of actual fear is, when we're just uncertain of how AI has taken over or how we use it in our regular lives. I saw this really moving ad, and it's like how Google Pixel helped somebody prepare for a job interview, and it was a dad coming out of the transitioning from parenthood and being a stay-at-home dad, and so instead of this is still a positive twist on the fear version, but it was very moving because he was able to prepare himself with the Google Pixel, but practice as much as he can and pretend he's at an actual interview, and then move forward with that. So it was more surprising take on something that can be taken as fearful. So,
If only everyone would stay in that positive space.
yes.
Yep. Because the next one is anger and disgust.
Anger, outrage.
Make them mad and and
social media wouldn't be social media without
no,
outrage.
exactly. And they found that creates viral content. So, of course. But my example of anger and disgust is there was a little bit of humor in it. Mine was when IHOP decided to change their name to IHOB, and they flipped the B over. And you wouldn't expect someone to be so angry over a simple letter change, but they were. I mean, they kept getting comments, on their social media platforms. I mean, they went a full campaign with it. And when it came down to it, they weren't really changing their name, but they just wanted to promote the fact that they were making hamburgers.
Right.
And so that was their special, and and it got people talking about them because they were so upset. They were like, no way, I would never go there if it's IHOB. That's no way. Right.
I mean, why would I go to IHOB? I'm only going to go to a place called IHOP.
I know.
Yeah.
Pancakes are serious business. You cannot mess with people's pancake preferences.
Yeah.
You should know, right?
I should know. Yes.
Yes.
We have very specific pancake eaters in my house.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so we've talked about all the different emotions and how they get engagement, but how you use it now is these are your tools. How are you going to use it? So we start with emotional branding. So companies like Hallmark, Nike, Coca-Cola, that is what is establishing a relationship between your brand and your customers. So you're emotionally tying your brand to your customers for generations of time.
Yeah, and then we touch on emotional advertising. So, Publix, for example, especially during the holidays.
Oh my God, the Publix commercials. Every time. I can't not. They get me every
They
time.
get you every time.
They get me too. It's so sweet. It's like you're stuck in the snow and you're not going to make it home, and eventually they all get home, we all, but Publix
And there's
really,
a warm plate of food waiting for you with family.
yes, and Dove especially, they've been having that great self-acceptance image,
Sort of
all bodies come in
empowerment sort of idea.
yeah, in different sizes. So I think those are great examples of emotional advertising, and of course PCA, video.
Oh gosh,
Pull on
Sarah,
your heart.
cue
I
the
was
Sarah
gonna
McLachlan.
say somebody start. Go ahead. There it is.
It's really sad puppy dog eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw her on an interview somewhere talking about how she can't even stand to sing that song anymore.
I bet.
Because of all of the related trauma.
Yes.
That makes sense.
I know.
And then the last one is storytelling. And this is something that I see in our work that we do a lot. That's what we strive to do with our clients. That is, you want to, open your brand to your clients, and you want them to know you, and you're telling a story from how you were founded to, mission and purpose. And there are a lot of companies Tom's does the 1-for-1. It's a story. You're not just buying a pair of shoes. You're helping others by purchasing their product, and it's a whole storyline. You're not just one point in their journey. You are part of a whole process.
They're pulling their mission into their branding and their marketing
Yeah.
too, which I think is really smart in their case. For
Yeah.
sure.
I think it's an interesting question for brands, though, in terms of you have the power to evoke all of these emotions and to touch a whole lot of people, particularly through social media and digital reach and things like that. So again, how will you use your powers?
Right.
You know, I
good.
think that's why. Exactly. Well, like authentic storytelling and those kind of connection points can be like positive, feel good, and, you know, but there's always a way to game the system. Take advantage of the opportunities that you have. So.
Yeah, I think y'all had talked about the Duolingo mascot in one of the previous episodes, and that one just confused people. I mean, it probably played on all the emotions, and I mean, I guess it worked. I don't know if it worked for them because really it was the only way to bring him back was to, you know, do your lessons.
Right.
It was just basically this big long way of saying, hey, you should do your lessons.
Right.
And
Are people going to engage for that length of time to see this character come back?
Yeah.
I think that negative side, or moving into that negative space, is more like a short term play. Like it'll get you a lot of attention in the short term, but it's probably not going to like build long term interest or relationship or, you know, think, hey, I want to engage with these people in the future.
No.
I much prefer the happy emotional
Yeah.
stuff. I saw this video or this sponsored ad on YouTube, I guess, and it was Rob Lowe promoting some sort of dog food. And they would ask him questions as if it was some other YouTube video that you would watch where they asked celebrities a bunch of questions, but they were asking him questions based on dogs and their health. And every time he answered one correctly, he got a puppy.
Aww.
And who doesn't want to watch Rob Lowe with a bunch of puppies in his lap? I mean, it was a winner 100%. Like my husband saw it first and he said, oh my God, you have to watch this. And he couldn't rewind it because it was an ad. But every time it came on, he would pause it so that I could come over and watch it. And that's the power of that kind of marketing.
Yeah.
And that one's, you know, it's spread around our house at least. And I don't know anybody that would shut that off. It's Rob Lowe and a bunch of puppies.
Puppies are great. Nobody's going to turn off the puppies.
No.
Well, that's really cool. Thank you guys for bringing this to the table today. That's pretty interesting. Hopefully we can all stay in a positive emotional space. That's what we're going to focus on.
And my tiny chef plushie will arrive in August.
Oh, good for you.
I
You brought him
sincerely
back.
hope that the tiny chef is okay because it was very sad.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm glad to hear that he's rebounding and coming back strong.
Yes.
Well,
Thanks,
I think
ladies.
it is about time for us to connect with Diane. So we'll go get connected with her and see you in a few.
Welcome back to Inspired By. Today's guest is a mixed media artist who travels around the country in her van, creating art, selling her work, and experiencing life all along the way. We are very excited to join and introduce everyone to our guest, Diane Portwood. Hi, Diane.
Hello, great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I've been inspired by your story for a few years now. I know you and I met, it must have been about 5-ish years ago.
A long time, 5 or 6.
It feels like a long time ago, up in New York at the Superfine Art Fair. And then we've kind of touched paths along the way at a couple of different art shows along the way over the last couple of years. So excited to bring you on today, and thanks again for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
For everyone who is unaware of what you do and who you are, just give us a little bit of background about you and your art.
So I'm Diane Portwood. I'm like a contemporary pop artist. I have been in the art world approaching 8 years now, full time. And I've been doing the van life thing full time for the past 2 years. And it's actually very interesting. The first show we met at, that one in New York 5 or 6 years ago, was my first big fair outside of the state I was living in at the time, which was Florida. And so my career has grown exponentially since then. So these days I travel around the country from show to show. And in between, I make art on the road. I resin out of a camping tent. And I kind of split my time between the big cities for art shows and then nature for creating art, and then for my own personal endeavors in the outdoor space.
So how do you, I've tried to think through this. How do you do what you do from a van with all of the materials and all of the electrical needs and, you know, chemical needs and cleaning and all of that. How do you do all of that from a van, store it with you, and bring it from show to show?
I will say it is very chaotic and not very convenient. But I do pull a trailer. I pull a 12-foot cargo trailer. So the van is mostly my living space for me and my 60-pound pit mix that travels with me. I do have storage underneath where I keep some of my prints and then most of my supplies. So my power tools, I use a lot of saws. In my mixed media work, I do a lot of woodworking in my pieces. My paints, which are acrylic and spray paint. Because I'm on the road, I do stay away from oils for now until I have a normal studio again, because I have nowhere to store an unfinished piece to dry. And then I set up a camping tent for my resin work, because a huge component of my pieces is that resin finish that I am known for that. So that gets quite complicated because I have to wait for a weather window. So I often have pieces that are sitting waiting to be resined until I'm in an area with no rain, little wind, and the right temperatures, because if it's too hot, the resin sets way too fast and it doesn't set well. And if it's too cold, it just won't set at all.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That seems like quite the ordeal, not to mention you're out in the middle of nowhere with nobody else with you to help you or listen to you when you go through tumultuous moments.
Except for
Yes.
the pop
Yes.
right?
I will say, I don't think, as far as just on a personal level, being out in the middle of nowhere, I would not have been brave enough to do that without my dog.
Yeah.
She is very protective of the van, and I do appreciate that. Especially the art thing, 99% of people are awesome and nice, but I'm out in the woods painting, and my van is painted, and it does attract a lot of attention. Yeah. Sometimes that is not great attention. So having a dog with me is awesome. It's not the most convenient studio setup, but it's a give and take, because I do get to show all over the country for nothing but gas costs. Most artists have massive hotel costs, food costs, and now I do get lazy. I eat out, but I can cook in my van. I can save a lot, especially these days, of money that way. And I also, on a personal level, get to do so much in the outdoors as far as hiking and climbing. That for me, at least right now, the trade-off is more than worth it. I am looking at getting a lease this winter. Well, I actually have finalized a 3-month lease. And then I'm looking at a longer term lease after that. The van life thing was never going to be forever, but it's been an amazing 2 years. By the time I get a full-time lease, it'll be 3 years on the road. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, even though it's not convenient. Yeah. I've got to experience so many cool things, and, I've visited all of the lower 48. I've shown art in 34 of the 50 states.
Wow.
Awesome.
And so I've really been able to hone in on my market, especially as the art markets are changing so rapidly in the post-COVID world. And we're seeing a lot of demographic changes in cities, a lot of people moving from the coast to the center of the U.S. because it's cheaper. And because I've been on the road during that time, I've been able to actually follow those changes as they happen, which has been super beneficial for my career.
Yeah, that's exciting, and kind of interesting to think about it from that perspective. So how do you kind of plan out your, for lack of a better term, road tour? From
Itinerary.
place to place, do you plan it out far in advance, or do you kind of go a month at a time and decide where you want to go from there? How does that all work out?
So as far as the art shows, I do have to plan those far in advance because I have to apply and be accepted into the majority of them. So the first things I look at when making a schedule, and it's usually by season, so the winter season, spring season, summer season, fall season, like quarterly, essentially. I look at the major art fairs, the indoor ones, the high-end ones in convention centers that I want to go to. So I apply to those first, and I see which ones I'm accepted in. And then based off of their geographic locations, I start applying to the outdoor art festivals that are close to them, so I can group things regionally. I do drive 40 to 50,000 miles per year. But that would be even more if I was constantly going from Manhattan to LA. Yeah. So I try not to do that unless it's an amazing show that just I can't group in with other things. I have a Chicago show in March that's that way. It is one of my best shows every year. There's nothing else in Chicago in March. So I drive out of my way for certain shows, but for most shows, I really try to group them geographically. And so once I'm accepted into seeing what major fairs I'm going to go, I plan my outdoor fairs. And then there are some last minute add-ons. If I, I'm in a place and I have an open weekend, I see a show that could be good, I'll just message them and see if I can kind of get a last minute spot. I would say 30% of the time that works.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of have a order of operations and how I make my schedule. And then as far as like my outdoor recreation time, that is planned a lot more last minute. So where I am geographically, the weeks I have off, because art shows are on the weekends. During the week, I try to go out in nature in the middle of nowhere. And then I'll have my work schedule where I'm working on art, and then kind of last minute, I'll decide on like climbs I want to do, hikes I want to do, mountains I want to summit, because that's based on like the weather that day. So those are like my last minute decisions schedule wise.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that aspect of your life that's outside of the art, but is more involved in the nature, and kind of what draws you to that and how that connects with your work.
So I grew up in the South, and I grew up working on horse and cattle ranches. And so I was always outside, and I loved being outside, but not in the way I'm outside today. I kind of was introduced to the out west and the mountains through my last relationship. He lived in LA, so I was constantly driving from Miami to LA. And when I was in between, after I passed through Texas, you see all these beautiful mountains. And so when I was doing those road trips, I would start adding stops along the way to just go see nature, see my first national parks, all of that. And so that really introduced me to the outdoors as I use it today, and also was a catalyst for me showing my art in more places than just South Florida.
Yeah.
I think I'm no longer in that relationship, but without that relationship, I think it would have taken me a lot longer to branch out of Miami. And so from there, when I got my van and decided to convert it, a huge reason was I knew I wanted to leave the South, but I didn't know where. So it's like, okay, let me see everywhere. Let me explore everywhere. And if I'm driving to all of these cool places, I need to take time and take in the nature and take in the sights. And so over the past couple of years, I've gone from, just visiting the national parks and kind of doing the more touristy things to now, like I do, 25-mile day hikes with my dog out deep into the backcountry. I've gotten into ice climbing and rock climbing, and I'm like just now getting into the more extreme, like mountaineering side of things, which is really exciting. So it's been a gradual increase in it, but I figure, if I'm going to be doing this crazy life living out of a van, I should be taking in the sights, not just, going from city to city. Because I will say van life in the cities is very stressful. It is not very fun. I wouldn't recommend it for most people. There's a lot of safety concerns. Parking is ridiculously hard, especially the trailer. Yeah, the van trailer combo in Manhattan is like the worst nightmare. So to really make the van life thing worth it, you almost have to get involved in the nature side of things. And it really, really does create a good balance. And I think it's also, I don't paint landscapes in my art. It's allowed me to take more time in creating pieces and be a lot more intentional in my art. And I think it's like a very cliche quote, but art only imitates life if you're actually living your life. And so to get my art business off of the ground from 21 until I would say 25, 26-ish, I was just in my studio, and I was always working, and I was doing like 4 different pop-ups every weekend in Miami. And I really had no life outside of the art world, and the outdoor thing has allowed me a much better work-life balance. And I think my art has shown a great improvement since then for that reason. So though nature is not a direct inspiration for my work, it has certainly accelerated and improved my work.
That's incredible.
I actually wonder if some of and hopefully you can speak to this, but if some of your iconography might be based on your love of exploration. Is any of that tied in? Because for those of you who don't know, she does a lot of astronaut women figures in her paintings, and then adds all of these really cool neon accents and things like that. So is that astronaut representative of you and your love of exploration and discovery, or where did that come from?
Yeah, so the astronaut iconography originally came from the fact that I actually went to school for aerospace engineering. Now, I didn't finish. I dropped out in undergrad, and that is a very long story. But I had every intention of going into that field, and I've been obsessed with space since I was a kid. So I was always listening to like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I was always watching documentaries growing up on space. And so that was just a natural fascination I've had for as long as I can remember. But speaking to what you said, also, astronauts are our modern day explorer. It is, besides our deep oceans, that is our last frontier. And I have always also been pretty obsessed with like stories of exploration, like first ascents of mountains, the first people to travel to like Antarctica. Then thinking about, living back in the 15, 16, 1700s and just deciding to get on a boat and sail to somewhere you don't know, knowing that you're probably going to die doing it is crazy to me. And so I think there is a big connection there, and it's very dorky, but often when I'm like very much in the backcountry and like I haven't seen another person in a couple of days, on hikes and stuff, I like to pretend, even though I have my phone and I have my satellite phone and I have all this, my water filters, I have a map. I'm like pretending that I'm the first one that did the trail,
It's like the Oregon Trail, right?
Exactly. That's what I feel like traveling around in my van. With my AC and my fans and all of that. But that certainly plays a role in the iconography of my paintings, because I think the type of person you have to be okay with kind of exploring these completely unknown places is so fascinating to me. So even when I was a kid, I never wanted to be an astronaut. I never wanted to go to space. That's like really scary to me. I like it here on Earth. I think it's pretty cool. But I'm fascinated with the type of people that are just so gung-ho about that.
Right.
Yeah, that's incredible.
What about, so going kind of back a little bit to you talking about how you wanted to be an astronaut, what turned the corner for you from an art perspective? When did you find art, and kind of what drew you to do that full time?
So I drew and painted as a kid all the time. I love animals, so I mostly painted like animals and fish and stuff, very different from what I paint today. And so it was always a hobby. And then when I was in undergrad, I was actually in a farming accident where I had a horse fall on top of me, and it fractured my L3, L4, my pelvis, and it ruptured my hip flexor.
Ooh.
And so I couldn't work. And I also just mentally, it was really hard for me to go from such an active person to not being physically capable of doing really much at all. And so I took a pause on school, and I couldn't work. So I was just painting a ton, and the paintings were like piling up I lived in a workers' quarters, a trailer home on the farm that I worked on. And luckily they were nice enough to let me stay there, even though I couldn't work because I didn't have other housing. And so basically I was like, well, I'm really broke and I can't really do anything else right now. So let me see if I can try to sell these. And I mean, 100% the first sales I got were it was like crowdfunding. It was like pity buys. And I'm very grateful for that. But then I was like, okay, well, this is kind of working. Let me start pursuing this. So by the time I was like mentally ready to go back to school, the art thing was kind of taking off. So I was like, okay, let me just take, another 6 months off, see where this goes. And I ended up kind of taking the leap, and looking back, it was very stupid. But way before I was ready to, I got a lease in Fort Lauderdale that I really couldn't afford, and moved and pursued art full time from there. I believe that was 2018, maybe 2019. It was 2018. And it was rough. I mean, the first couple years were rough. Thankfully, my landlord was super chill because I was constantly late on rent. And I really started just that's where I like locked myself in my studio and was just doing every opportunity I could get my hands on. If it was just some random bar in South Florida that would let me set up shop on the sidewalk, I was showing my art. And from there it grew until I was doing larger shows in the South Florida area. And then kind of right around when COVID hit, I had applied and paid for some fairs in New York, one of which was Super Fine. Yeah. And that, as you know, got delayed until I think it was 2021.
Yeah.
And that was my first like bigger high-end fair. And from there, that went very, very well. And I also was like quite lucky that I'm sure you experienced this with your husband, the post-COVID art sales boom. That, especially in Florida, happened because all the New Yorkers moved down and they were buying bigger houses and they needed, more art in their empty houses. And that like push of funding made it so I was able to apply to a ton of art fairs. And so I really went from like not doing the art fair scene at all to doing like 10 fairs a year almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
And part, luck is where opportunity meets preparation, right? So part of that was like I had been doing those 5 pop-ups every weekend. But I also, like, the timing of things really worked out where I was able to just jump into the art fair scene because the fairs are expensive and it is a massive upfront cost and it is a massive financial risk for artists. But the fair, artists have different ways of making money. I'm a fair artist. I know how to sell work at a fair. I know how to present my work at a fair. And that time really helped me hone that in quickly and discover that that's like what my work is suited for. And so I was able to just dive in.
Do you find that it's a bit of a game of numbers when it comes to the art fair scene that, it benefits you to do more because some aren't going to be as good and some are going to be great?
Yes. And when I'm talking to artists that have never done a fair, I'm always very careful about the language I use. I look at it as an investment. So you never invest money you can't afford to lose, because I've just seen so many bad weekends for artists that have set them back financially, like for the rest of the year. And I think artists need to be very careful about that. At the same time, not every show can be an amazing show. If that was the case, no one would work a normal job. The art fair scene is very masochistic in that it tends to be on extremes. You tend to, and now that I know what I'm doing more, I have a pretty consistent idea of sales in cities and at certain fairs. But especially in the beginning, it's either like, oh my God, I'm setting sales records, or it's, oh my God, I just lost $7,000.
Right.
And so you have to be able to ride that roller coaster mentally, which is difficult to do. And then as you go, you learn a lot more about which fairs are good for your work, which cities are good for your work, how to sell art, how to present art, and then it becomes more even keel. But the beginning part of that is very, very mentally and financially difficult.
Yeah, talk about the emotional or mental state, as a creative in the world, especially you being very independent and kind of going out on your own, literally on your own, with your dog in tow, of course. Talk a little bit about kind of the emotional state or toll that has on you as a creative person and how your art is affected by that, or if it is.
Oh, I think anyone who says that their art is not affected by the state of their sales is either unaware or lying, in my opinion. There's always going to be some subconscious part that is, if like things are popular, they sell well, you're going to paint more of it. And now if you're not full-time in the art world, and I always like to say, just because you're not full-time doesn't mean you're not a fantastic artist. You being full-time or not full-time is not relevant as to whether or not you can call yourself an artist. And I really don't like the elitism that exists in the art world around that.
Yeah.
But that aside, especially if you are doing it full time, you do need to be aware of what's popular and what sells, because your entire financial outlook is dependent on that. And so certainly I have series and they change. So like one of my first really popular series was, it was an astronaut holding like a planet balloon and like floating. That sold really well. And then you do a lot of those and you get a little bored with doing the same thing over and over again. And I always say, as soon as you're bored, your audience is bored too. So you move on. And I did like the astronauts with the 3D silk flowers coming out. And then I kind of moved on from that. And right now I'm doing what I call my Houston, I Am the Problem series, where I find like antique frames. And I have this female character where the visor just shows like bright red lips and the astronaut's like melting onto the frame. And this is actually, I will say, my favorite series by far. I've had the most fun with it. And it's by far the most popular thing I've ever created. And so I think, you know, a lot of people will say like, oh, don't let what's popular kind of sway what you create. I think that's a little silly. For me, the popular things fund the passion projects of series that are maybe not as popular with people. So like I do a lot of naked astronauts. I really love the juxtaposition of like the protection of the helmet and the vulnerability of nudity. Those do not sell well at all. It takes forever to sell those. I still have some, like I have a massive like 4 foot by 5 foot naked astronaut. Actually 2. They're both in my parents' house right now. One of which my mom loves and is like displayed in her house, which is hilarious to me. And the other one's like underneath in their basement in storage. And the originals have not sold. And actually the one my mom loves, I've never displayed it publicly because it is a naked astronaut stepping off of a cliff in Monument Valley. So it combines like a nude astronaut and Southwestern art, and people that like Southwestern art don't like nude art, and people that like nude art don't. I don't know who's going to buy that. And it's massive. It's like 5 feet by 7 feet. So you have to really love it too. And so like I have
your
those.
mom really loves it, which is great.
Yeah.
That was his mom.
But it's like, because I find things that people love that I love too, and I make a lot of them and I sell a lot of them, I can create things like that and hold on to it, and I don't have to feel pressure or guilt for making art that I know is a little weird and won't sell well. So I think there's that side of it as far as like what you're creating and what you're selling. And then there's the other side of it, which is like learning to regulate your emotions at art events. I think if you played sports as a kid, I think that's really useful for the art show scene, actually. You need to learn to win and lose gracefully. If you're having a really good show and everyone else around you is having a shit time. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. It's really not nice of you to just be like gloating and, you know, kind of rubbing into people's faces. On the other end of things, if you're having a bad fair and everyone else around you is having a good fair, you need to hold it together and be happy for other people. And also, like, let's say, you know, fairs, the big ones, they're 4 days long. So I've had fairs where I've sold almost nothing until Sunday, and then I've made a killing on Sunday and it ends up being a great fair. But what I watch a lot of artists do is it's Sunday rolls around, they haven't sold much. They know they're $5,000 in the hole. And I totally understand being upset about that. It's very fair. But the thing is, you need to just go back to your hotel, or in my case, my van, and I'll be upset when I'm alone, when I'm at the show. If you roll into that Sunday and you are defeated and you're not talking to people because you're sad, you're automatically guaranteeing that your Sunday is also going to be bad. And regardless, you know, you could, I'm not saying shove those feelings down and don't acknowledge them. I'm just saying wait till you're back here at hotel. But
just grab a shot, get up, and
yeah. But the thing is, like, you could be on top of it and chipper at the show and still have a bad Sunday, you know, and just the whole show is just not good for you. But that is part of it. And obviously, if you're having a lot of bad shows in a row, then you need to reevaluate and be like, am I picking the wrong shows for my work? Am I presenting my work poorly? Am I talking to people poorly? Because a huge part of it is just being a good salesperson, which a lot of artists aren't very good at. And I had to work super hard to get good at that. If it's a lot of bad shows in a row, then you need to reevaluate. But if it's 1 or 2 bad shows, that is literally just part of the game. And you have to accept that sometimes it's going to happen. And you have to learn to just hold your head up high, be nice to your neighbors, be nice to the people. that are like looking at your art, because again, if all the shows were good, we would all be artists. You just have to accept that you're going to experience that, unfortunately, probably often if you do a lot of shows.
Right. Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said too for what happens after that people don't take into account. They think it's all in the moment. These are the sales that I'm making and that's it. But the number of people that you shake hands with and talk to at these shows, and some of them will tell you who they are and some of them don't divulge, but there are a lot of people that you can make really amazing connections with, that they're not interested in buying your piece today, but they're interested in using it or utilizing your talent for something else in the future. And if you're not talking to them, or if you have a bad attitude toward everything, like obviously you're going to turn them away from the very get-go. And I think people discount that thought or don't think about it, maybe, especially when they start out, that a lot of it is about the connections that you make while you're there that will set you up for future endeavors moving forward.
Yes, I think that's so important. I mean, my Instagram, I mostly use it as just like a way for people that see me at art shows to keep seeing my work, and it's like a portfolio for my work. And I cannot tell you the amount of people that, buy something off the website and then DM or email me like, hey, I saw your work here 3 years ago and I've been following you and we're finally ready to buy and I'm so excited for this piece. Like, that's such a powerful tool. And it's another reason why no matter how the art show is going, I'm not saying like smile and be like this fake happy person, but you just need to be pleasant. That's just part of, it's just working like in any sort of, not that the art world is like customer service, but when you're at a fair artist, it kind of is. You just need to be able to be pleasant to be around. And I do think a lot of artists struggle with that. And I think the more you learn to kind of, and again, I'm not saying like shove the feelings down and never acknowledge them, because that's not healthy either. You just wait a couple hours so you're back at your hotel and then let it all out, So that is really important. I actually just did a show in an outdoor show in Bend, Oregon, this past weekend. And so I went there 2 years ago in the fall. And I was at a rough time in my life. I was like getting used to life on the road. I had just ended a long-term relationship. Part of the reason why I had converted the van and decided to do what was originally going to be part-time van life was because I thought that this person would be on the road with me. So I was like dealing with being super scared for my own safety. I wasn't expecting to be on the road by myself. And that was certainly showing up at art shows. Well, I don't think I was unpleasant to be around. I certainly wasn't like as outgoing and talking to people as much. And so that was one of the shows that happened during that time. And these outdoor festivals are less financially risky. They're a lot more work because you have to set up your own tent and all of that. But they're 4 to 5. Oh yeah. I mean, my art's wood and resin, so I'm actually more immune to the weather issues than most artists, but it is something to consider. I think, it costs like $400 or $500 to be in this show. And I think I did like 2,000 in sales, which is fine. And, a lot of artists will hear that and be like, oh my God, that's so much money. Like, and I don't mean to complain about that, but compared to like what I want to be making at shows for that amount of work, it's not enough to make a show worth it. So, I wasn't upset. I wasn't in the red, but I didn't walk away from that show happy. However, I went back this weekend and I basically quadrupled my sales. So I was just under 8,000 in sales this weekend. And I cannot tell you, most of the big sales that happened this weekend for a $500 show were from people that saw me 2 years ago. And they're like, oh, we really liked your art, but we didn't really get to talk to you. And it wasn't that I just wasn't talking to people. And so we kind of passed. But like, we followed you on Instagram and like, we've been watching what you do. And I was obviously a lot more outgoing. I kind of know the show scene now this year, and they're like, we're ready to buy now. And so they ended up buying stuff.
That's great.
So just like, obviously if a show's really terrible, you don't go back to it. Or if you really have the sense that it's just not the right show for your work, you don't go back to it. But part of it is, even if you have a bad show, you have to be willing to be honest with yourself and say, was I actually on my A game at that show, or were there things that I could have been doing a lot better as far as like talking to people to make sales? And I knew at that show that there seemed to be my demographic of buyer there, but I just wasn't on my A game for personal reasons, which is sometimes going to happen because we're human.
Everybody has
And so yeah. So the shows are a very emotional thing. It's a very vulnerable thing. Obviously you want people to like your art. You're going to hear comments from people. I will say usually it's very young kids and then very old women that have zero filter. And you have to learn to just like smile and nod. I think especially with the kids, you just see the horrified looks of the parents after they make some comment. And I think it's hilarious. I don't take that personally at all. But you do have to learn to just smile and nod through it all. That's really important.
Yeah. I think there's a lot too about that, you touched on it, the connection that you have with people through your art, and that a lot of it, obviously they are initially drawn to you from your art, but I think what potentially makes them buy or makes them stick around and follow you for long periods of time isn't always just your art, it's also the connection that they have to you as a person. And that they can kind of see some of themselves in your art or in you.
Yes. So one thing I really like doing, just because at busy shows you literally cannot talk to everyone, is for the pieces that are very meaningful to me, I write a little paragraph and I have it next to the piece. So that way, if I can't talk to them, I can still give them a feeling of kind of my mindset around the art. The other thing too is I'm an emerging artist and I mostly show at emerging artist fairs. So although I've sold very large pieces for more, my average original is under $5,000. Although it's kind of cool, I've actually had a few people buy my work as an investment, and it's like they have massive art collections from really huge artists, and it's cool and it's not cool because then your art is like sitting in storage and they're not actually enjoying it. But it's like cool that they believe in your art enough to do that. But for the most part, it's not people like that are going to be buying my work or other artists' work in that price category. It's people that just see the work and either aesthetically they love it so much they're going to buy it right there. Or what's more common is they're going to talk to you and really enjoy the story behind the art or connect with you in some way. And that's really what's going to sell them on the piece. And so I do think there is an attitude among a lot of artists where they want people to just see the work and immediately fall in love and drop $3,000 right there. Although that does happen sometimes, it's not super realistic. And I will say also regionally, the cultures are very different. So that happens way more in New York. People don't on the East Coast. I don't know if they're afraid of you doing like the sleazy used car sales pitch or what, but they don't want to talk to you a lot of times. And part of, doing the art show thing is learning to read people. So you introduce yourself and you're friendly, but you can tell they don't want to talk. So you don't keep pushing it and you just let them, and they make another lap and maybe they look at it again and you say hello again and they make another lap and they come back and buy it. Whereas I would say in the Midwest and the centers and even on the West Coast, people want to talk to you a little bit more. So it's also learning to read the person that's in front of you and respect what they seem to want as well.
Sure. Would you prefer to have a buyer who wants your art for the art and spends little money on it because they can't? Or somebody who has a lot of money and just buys it for sake of having an extra piece in their collection? It doesn't matter to them that it's yours. I know that's a weird question.
No, I've talked to a lot of people about this. I appreciate both. First of all, I appreciate anyone that supports my art. I would say I do really appreciate people that are really emotionally connected to the art. I think there's something really satisfying about that. And that's the reason I do make resined prints. And I don't just do original work, is you democratize the art a little bit more. And then also on a business level, there's way more people that can afford an $150 piece of art versus a $1,500 or $3,000 or $5,000 piece of art. So even though I move a lot of original work in that price range, what has actually stabilized my business and made this made my income more stable and moved me out of like the starving artist lifestyle has been offering the lower priced pieces and selling more volume. And again, I think there is a stigma in the art world to doing that. But I think that's silly. I think being able to, have your art in more people's hands that really love it is an awesome thing.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get back a little bit to kind of your inspiration and where you find inspiration to create. So are there specific places? I mean, obviously you love the outdoors, but are there specific places that you find inspiration or other artists that you follow that you love? Kind of where do you get the drive to create for yourself?
I think spending a lot of time alone out in nature is really helpful. Like all I'm doing when I'm hiking is kind of thinking about often like very random things, but that's when I would say that and like scenic drives are kind of when ideas pop into my head most often. I think having that alone time and the peacefulness of nature is really helpful to me. A lot of my color palettes recently have come from natural landscapes. So again, even though I don't paint landscapes, I am seeing like some of the most beautiful things I don't really travel internationally. It's hard to ship a van to a different continent, but, I'm seeing the most beautiful things in North America constantly. Like I'm very, privileged in that. And so, the color palettes, I often get a ton of inspiration from that. I think it's a mix of things. The alone time and also being able to take breaks from the art, whereas like when I was locked in my studio, I never stepped away. There's a lot of power in, if you're stuck on a piece or you're not really sure what direction to go, just stepping away, doing something else, and then coming back to it with a fresh set of eyes. I think most artists probably figured this out way before me, but I never used to do that. Like I would just get really frustrated. Yeah. But with having the amazing nature around me, it's a lot easier to step away. And that has really helped my art. I will say I do struggle with, basically the way I orient how I work and my work schedule is I'll have like 3 to 4 weeks of back-to-back shows, where I am like constantly working. I'm doing a lot less hiking, a lot less outdoors time. And then I'll have like a 2 to 3 week break, where I'm still painting, but not nearly as much. And I'm like mostly out in nature. And so I kind of live right now on two extremes. And I found that works really well for me. I have a little bit of a hard time, and this is just my personality. I'm very much an all or nothing person where I'm like, oh, like,
Not for me at all.
yeah. So having the two extremes is really helpful. For me, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for most people. Because if I'm trying to do both, what happens is I just neglect both. So I'm like not working as much as I should, and then also not getting to do like the massive 20-mile hike that I wanted to do, So when I separate them a little bit, it's helpful for me not to feel guilty about not going like 100% in each field.
Yeah, I think that's really smart.
Yeah. I'm also really interested in, your background studying aerospace, and you clearly have this interest in science and engineering. Does that influence what you create or how you create, or does that come out in your work?
Yes. So I think it's been really helpful in the mixed media aspects of my work, because my work is not the type of work where I can just sit down and like randomly start painting without a plan. A lot of my pieces are like layered woodworking pieces. I involve LEDs and electronic components. So I have to actually really plan out each piece. And I think having that sort of type A mindset and background really helped me with that. I'm also not afraid of power tools. I grew up using them. And I think more artists should be comfortable with power tools. It's actually really crazy to me at the art fairs how many, and men and women, I'm not saying this about women, that can't use a drill.
Yeah.
It like really surprises me. The more tool, like literal and metaphorical tools you have in your literal or metaphorical tool belt, the cooler things you can create. And so when you move away from just your typical brushes, you open up new universes of possibility of what you can create. So I think having the engineering background certainly had moved me more into the mixed media, which I'm moving more and more towards as I do more. My mixed media was just like the resin mostly, would have classified me as a mixed media artist, but now I'm using a lot more different materials. I'm doing a lot more layered pieces. Now those do take much, much longer. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of them in the works that aren't finished yet. But yeah, that certainly, and then also, it helped me on the business side of things. Having a more type A personality, I think I naturally handle the business side better. I would say the majority of artists really struggle with that. But I've actually, at times where I'm having artist block and things like that, I find it really easy to just be like, oh, well, that is a good excuse for me to catch up on, some of the taxes and like all the other crazy things that come with all that. I will say I've hired a CPA because the tax situation with how many states I show artwork in is
Oh my
absolutely
God.
ridiculous.
I can only imagine.
Oh God, it's awful. So I outsourced that because I needed to. But as far as just like the marketing and things, if I'm having artist block, I just move towards working on the business. And then usually by the time I figure out whatever I was putting off, I'm ready to go back to the artwork.
It's great that you've got that kind of left brain, right brain equality there, that you can switch on and off and use them to your advantage. You're right. A lot of artists, I mean, obviously they're mostly right brain. So I think it doesn't come naturally to them, and it becomes more of a struggle to deal with the more technical aspects or the business aspects and things like that, when they really just want to hone in on their emotions and getting things out on paper or canvas or whatever their medium is, and not wanting to, and therefore avoiding all of the other stuff, which is possibly some of the things that might be holding them back in their art career. And even in, when you talk about talking with people, I've noticed that a lot of artists are also very shy and have trouble kind of socializing with other people about their work, or they don't want to delve into the meanings behind them because it's very personal to them, which I can totally appreciate, but also it might hold them back from being able to connect with people on that level. And so it's great that you're able to, and you recognize that about yourself, and that you're able to kind of balance those two sides of your brain.
Well, I think I always say the STEP fields, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, are problem-solving disciplines. So they're inherently creative, but just not in the same way we think of artistic creativity. But I do think there's a lot more people. I mean, everyone I went to school with in aerospace, they played an instrument or they were in theater. Like, there are certainly extremes where some people's like extreme one way or extreme the other way. Most people have both, but there's one that comes a little easier, and so they just hone in on that.
Yeah.
Because I will say, I am no saint. I certainly put off a lot of the business things until like the day before. I'm very bad about that. I do get it done, but like we all have our kind of bad tendencies, but you just need to be self-aware of like what you struggle with, and either outsource it or set up systems that mitigate things. And about the sales thing, I was not good at sales at first. I'm very glad that I started in the pop-ups because they're a lot less of a financial risk. A lot of times they were free or like $50 for a table or something at like a local art walk. Because I did not know how to talk to people. I actually, when I first moved to South Florida to pursue art full time, I tried to get a part-time job. I had worked on farms and I had managed farms, so I had a great CV, And so I was like, well, I'll just get like a hostessing job. That's what everyone does in South Florida.
Right.
Obviously, there's a ton of tourism there. And I was like going on interview after interview, and no one would hire me. And I couldn't understand why, because I'd been like managing, and then I suddenly couldn't just get like a hostessing or a waitressing job. And it's very funny because this person actually owns some of my art now. But I was interviewing with a manager of I'm not going to like dox the restaurant on here, but a very like popular bougie restaurant in Fort Lauderdale. And I could tell the interview was going really poorly. And I was like interviewing for essentially front of house, sort of like entry level job. And I was like, hey, this is like my 10th interview, and I already know you're not going to hire me. Could I just get some like really honest feedback, because I don't know why I'm struggling so bad. And he was like, you want me to be honest? And I was like, oh Lord, I guess so.
I think so.
Maybe. Yeah. And this is like a direct quote, and I will never forget this. He said, you are certainly hot enough for me to put you in front of house, but your personality is so awful, I would never hire you to be like a public facing person.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, thank you for the feedback. And I went back to my car and cried.
I bet.
And it wasn't that I was like a mean person, but I was so shy that I could often be very off-putting. Like I certainly fell into that engineer stereotype in that way. And if you talk to any of my like early life friends, they will tell you the same thing. I was just so awkward and so shy and just like couldn't read social cues at like really. But the thing was that even though he could have said it in a nicer way, but I think if he had, it wouldn't have hit me as hard. And at that point I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to do this social thing, I guess, like Jesus. So I started so I started like and this is again like super type A, but I like set goals for myself to where like when I was grocery shopping, I was like, okay, I read like all these self-help books. I was like, okay, when I'm in the grocery store, like I'm going to compliment 3 people, and I'm going to do that until I don't feel scared about talking to people. So I started doing all these little things, and then I was doing all these pop-ups where I had to talk to people to sell my art. And I think sometimes I live a weird life, and I think I can sometimes be a little much for people, but I'm pretty socially aware and can talk to people and socialize when I want to. Ooh, I have a bug on my glasses. But part of the van life is insects. But but I'm a very, very different person than I think I would have been if I had stayed in engineering, because I would have been allowed to continue acting shy, essentially. And this whole other side of me that existed in me that I was scared to let out, I probably never would have developed. So that's another really interesting thing about being in the art world, and particularly if you want to be a fair artist. And you know, a lot of people try to go the route of gallery representation, which is awesome, and I'm starting to do some of that now. But part of being a front facing for your own artwork is learning to talk to people and learning to be social. And that can look very different for different people. You don't have to have this like bubbly personality. I mean, I wouldn't describe the way I talk to people as like super bubbly. But you do have to be interesting and pleasant. And though that sounds like very common sense, I think a lot of people don't fully understand that.
Yeah. Well, the good news is you are incredibly interesting.
Yes.
Like your story,
you've got good material to work with.
the journeys you have been on are really incredible and fascinating. And I am so glad that you joined our podcast. But 2, that I have been able to meet you and kind of follow your story and get to know you more on that level, and also get to see your work and kind of how things have progressed and established you in what you do over the years. It's very exciting. And I just think that you have a very inspiring story and background. So you had mentioned that you're getting a studio space or you're getting a lease. So what happens next? Is this the end of van life for you, or kind of what's your future plan?
No, so I think it's interesting. I see a ton of like outdoor festival artists that do the partial RV and van life. There's really no one that does it full time, especially producing large pieces like I do. You do not see that in the fair circuit. And part of the reason is the fairs are in big cities where it's a little scarier to stay in your van. And you do have to be a little more careful. But I'm not getting rid of the van. Now that I'm used to not paying hotel fees, I'm never paying for hotels. They're so expensive, especially in the cities. And I've like learned how to navigate doing van life in the cities. So I'm not selling the van. Once I have a lease, I still plan on transitioning pretty slowly. Even with the lease, I will still probably spend 4 to 5 months on the road. And what it'll look like is I'll be doing a month at home, and then I'm going to group together 3 or 4 shows in a region, come back home for a month, 3 or 4 shows in a region, come back home. And my goal is to kind of wither down the amount of shows I do, because as I get older, a family is really important to me. Dating out of a van on the road is impossible, so I would like to actually date too. And you can't do that if you're doing 50 shows a year. 50, not 15. So like last year I did over 40 shows. This year I'm doing around 30. And I'm going to keep kind of condensing those to just the most successful shows that are best for my work. And then also pushing more online sales, which have been growing, which is awesome. And that way I can have a little bit more of a normal life and a work-life balance, because I certainly, if I do have kids, I can't be on the road half a year while they're in school. Like that's just not realistic. So I do have to start thinking ahead in that way as far as balancing my business and personal life goals. I'm looking at getting a lease in either Southwest Colorado or Salt Lake City. And those are very central, so I can kind of hit both coasts and the Midwest from there. And I'm doing a 3-month lease in a place called Montrose, Colorado, which is at the base of the San Juan Mountains. It's more people will be familiar with Telluride or Ouray, Colorado. Montrose is like 40 minutes outside of Ouray, but it's half the price as far as like leases. So, I'm going to try that out, over winter, because Ouray is the ice climbing capital of the US. So I'll be able to hone in on my ice climbing, on a personal level. And then I can also reach LA in 12 hours for some of the winter shows in Palm Springs. And then I'm just going to see if I feel like socially that town is a little too small for me. And I have a feeling I may feel that way. And if so, I'll go to Salt Lake City, which is obviously a much bigger city. And actually Salt Lake has a great art scene, as well. So, because I travel to all these fairs, I don't necessarily have to have a big art scene where I live, but it would be nice. So I'm kind of deciding between the two. I'm experimenting with Montrose first, and then seeing if after those 3 months I want to go to Salt Lake or not. But the van life is not ending. It'll also be doing like partial van life, which is when I converted the van 3 years ago now. That was my intention, was like half the year on the road, half at home. And then life had different plans. So I'll be going, I guess, back to the original plan that happened 3 years ago.
Well, Diane, we thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and kind of giving us an inside look into not only an artist's life, but a van life and how that all connects. And I'm so pleased that you're kind of grabbing life by the horns and doing with it what you will. It's not many people can say that.
No,
a lot of people are tied down, or they allow themselves to be tied down. And I just love that you're experiencing everything that there is to experience, because that's one of those things when you get older and are unable to do this, you'll look back and not have any of those regrets that you didn't. So very pleased for you and looking
thank you.
all that is to come for you. Tell our audience too where we can find you, follow you, and all of that good stuff.
So I mostly do Instagram. I do have a hard time balancing multiple social media outlets. So mostly you'll find me on Instagram, which is just my name at Diane Portwood. And then you can see all my artwork on my website, which is just dianeportwoodarts.com.
Love it.
Amazing.
And where are you headed now? You've got a couple shows coming up. Talk about those two.
So I have 2 shows in the Seattle area this next 2 weekends. So I have Seattle Art Fair, which is it'll be one of the more high-end art fairs I've done. I do have gallery representation for that one, but I will also be there myself. And that is this weekend. And then I have the Bellevue Arts Museum Arts Festival, which is an outdoor art festival, but a higher-end outdoor art festival in the Bellevue suburb of Seattle. And I'm quite excited for that one because it is one of the higher-end art festivals that I've been accepted into. So it'll be really exciting to show there as well.
Love it.
That's great.
Exciting. Well, we wish you all of the best, of course. And before we go, we are hoping that we can ask you just a couple of rapid fire questions.
Yes.
Okay, so these are just kind of meant to be fun, so feel free to pass. Question. Do you remember the Mr. Sketch scented markers? And if so, what was your favorite flavor?
I do. Probably
You'd be surprised how many people don't.
that's crazy to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm like I'm like borderline Gen Z and millennial. So maybe I'm the last kid to experience that. But the light blue one.
Yep.
Where is a place that you feel the most inspired?
The San Juan Mountains in Colorado. 100%.
If you were a hero or a villain, what would be your superpower?
Oh, Lord. Say like to read minds, but if I could do that, I would 100% be a villain. I feel
If you could pick your at-bat music, your walk-up music, what would it be?
Metallica, For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Love it.
Nice. Would you rather travel to the past or the future?
I think the past. Yeah. Mostly for nature, to see it like for the first time, like to actually still have places to explore that were untouched.
That'd be amazing. One item that's left on your bucket list?
I have a lot of mountain summits. I have a big bucket list. Yeah.
If you could live in a TV show, what TV show would it be?
I don't watch a lot of TV. I would probably, this is really nerdy and no one's going to know this. I'd want to be in an anime called Jujutsu Kaisen. They fight like demons and stuff.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Would you rather live the rest of your life in total sunlight or total darkness?
Sunlight.
And finally, can you impersonate any famous person or character?
Oh no, I can't do accents or anything like that.
Oh no, I'm not doing that.
No.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. It was really inspiring and amazing. And thank you, everybody else out there, for joining us today. If you like what you heard, please remember to click that like and subscribe button. And, if you want to see more from our team, follow us on Instagram at Clementine Creative Agency. And we'll see you next time. And in the meantime, I hope you find lots of new ways to be inspired.
Bye.